We've all heard it before. A blaring ambulance siren means move aside, help is on the way. But sometimes it's the person sitting behind the wheel who may need it most.
I remember leaving the station, lights and sirens, and then waking up in front of the house of the patient. I don't remember driving at all, and my partner was asleep next to me.
An EMT at Mohawk Ambulance for 2 years, Alyssa Bevilacqua-Schufelt explains the terrifying moment she and many of her coworkers have experienced as micro-sleeping. Last year, Alyssa and ambulance driver Cody Bryans were sent to transport 64-year-old Chris Arnicke from Albany Med to his home in Sloansville. They never made it. Bryans fell asleep at the wheel.
And I felt a big bump, and I thought it was a pothole, and then we just smacked into a tree.
Arnicke died from his injuries. Schufelt is still trying to recover from PTSD.
Alyssa, are you scared of the same thing happening again that happened last year?
Absolutely.
An accident investigation report found Bryans was 8 hours into a 12-hour shift, following a 14-hour break. But Alyssa says with EMT wages averaging $12.51 an hour, many employees work multiple jobs in their time off to make ends meet. A sick call results in short staffing, which can lead to mandatory overtime for the coworkers who are already on the clock.
I've been on work binges where I would work for 14 days straight and have a day off, and then work another 7 days and get a couple days off, kind of for months.
Or else what? You said disciplinary action, right? What happens?
So they'll get rid of us.
They'll fire you.
There's no law that establishes the amount of hours an EMT can work. Companies are free to dictate their scheduling and pay standards and do so with the union if one is involved. So while their intentions may be to serve and protect, if an EMT is tired, there's a good chance you're putting your life at risk the next time you dial 911. But there is much more plaguing the EMS industry than just low wages and the need for scheduling standards. Coming up at 6, I investigate what those other issues are and what needs to be done by the state to begin to address them. Karen Tararache, News Channel 13.
You make the call.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
A dispatcher sends an ambulance.
Okay, ma'am, just let them know. Help should be there shortly, okay?
But what many in emergency medical service want you to know is the industry itself is in need of help.
If things don't change, it's quite plausible that a lot of agencies will not be here.
Dan Schuttig has been negotiating for higher wages for EMS union employees like Tanya Danish and Alyssa Bevilacqua-Schufelt.
At the end of this year, it will be $12.75 for a fast food establishment. That will probably be more than quite a few EMTs make throughout New York State.
When Tanya first began working as an EMT at Mohawk Ambulance, she was making $8 and change an hour. Now, almost 14 years later, she earns not even twice that amount.
Nobody should have to work 100 hours to a week just to get insurance.
The company requires a minimum of 8 hours in between shifts, but she says as a result of low wages, many employees often work multiple jobs in what would be their off time.
Theoretically, people are probably getting about 4 hours of sleep in that whole time frame while gone.
The fear that somebody has to live with that, or the fear that anybody could fall asleep behind the wheel and take out themselves, their partners, innocent bystanders, is absolutely frightening.
That's exactly what happened to Alyssa last year when her coworker driver Cody Bryans fell asleep at the wheel, causing them to crash into a tree, killing their passenger.
On a weekly basis, people are so overtired that they're micro-sleeping while driving.
EMTs are exhausted and underpaid, but that just scratches the surface.
Medicaid is our biggest problem. It's about 50% of our calls. It pays about half or a third of what Medicare pays.
Medicare is the same nationwide. Medicaid compensation varies from state to state and county to county. For example, a patient who is transported from Nathan Littauer Hospital in Gloversville to Albany Med will garner a $212 reimbursement. But Fulton County Ambulance Service will incur more than twice that in direct costs, causing nonprofits to buckle and over time shut down.
We're barely getting by. We're hanging on by our fingernails.
And when an ambulance responds to but does not transport a patient to the hospital, insurance companies will not compensate them for time, medication, or equipment used, again, putting the company in the red.
The demand for 911 service is just rising, and the resources are here. They're not even close to meeting.
We'll be waiting 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes for an ambulance in a few years.
Applying for state aid could help offset some of those expenses, but New York State doesn't consider EMS a required service, like with police and fire. It's yet another roadblock that leaves ambulance companies unable to apply for grants.
In a perfect world, I'd like to see, like the governor appoint a task force or something along those lines to look at all the problems in EMS.
So the next time you make that call,
Everybody needs to understand what really goes on.
remember, you may not be the only one who is facing an emergency.
And we are very passionate about our jobs, but something has to give here.
Female having an allergic reaction to peanuts.
Every step we make, every move that we make is always in the best interest of the community.
A paramedic of 15 years, Jay Tyler knows the problems plaguing EMS are nothing new.
It's not unheard of for EMTs and paramedics to have 2-3 jobs.
An entry-level EMT in Guilderland will earn $16 an hour. But remember, Medicaid reimbursements fall short considering what ambulance companies actually spend on a call. Also, treatment but no patient transport to a hospital means insurance companies don't pay for services rendered. And emergency equipment doesn't come cheap, like this chest compression device that can help someone in cardiac arrest. It can set a shot back nearly 16 grand.
This is what we do. We know that this is an expensive business, and we put our collective brains together to try to come up with more economical solutions.
One solution has been to enforce a two-tier system. Instead of a paramedic responding to an emergency in a fly car to meet a driver and EMT, the paramedic goes with the EMT, taking an extra vehicle and extra time out of the equation.
If the patient is going in under basic life support and they take a turn for the worse, the paramedic can always get out and get in the back and initiate advanced life support.
The town also purchased a used bariatric ambulance they found at a New Jersey dealer, retrofitted it with a mechanical lift and stretcher so that staff aren't injuring themselves when transporting a larger patient.
Bottom line is that with that one ambulance, we were able to cut response times basically from they were approaching 12 or 13 minutes on average to 5 or 6 minutes.
Peter Barber says the town has been preparing for 2 years to take on Western Turnpike Rescue Squad. As a result, for the first time in 15 years, residents will see a 1% tax hike. For a home valued at $250,000, that translates to an extra $6.50.
I don't think for essential services you can rely upon gimmicks or any other way. I think you really should pay for it as you go.
The recently approved increase will help to cover the cost of 5 ambulances, a 21 part-time employee payroll, and 2 building mortgages the town will take on in the acquisition.
I think everybody wants to make certain that their residents are fully protected and you provide the best service possible.